Just kind of a good highlight of what is FieldNET, what is pivot control, some of the features and benefits of what FieldNET is, any new features for this upcoming year, as well as showing what it looks like to load a script inside the system. So with that, if you guys have any questions as we go throughout this webinar here this morning, make sure you put them in the chat tab and we'll get them over to Nick. But with that, I will share over to you, Nick, and make you the presenter, and we'll go from here.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Sounds good.
All right, good. Well, my name is Nick Becker. I'm the FieldNET Sales Specialist here at Lindsay. So there's a few things that I want to go over. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, it looks good.
Okay, so one thing that I'm going to go over then is do a quick overview of our portal, kind of a live demo. How do you load a script? You know, some of the other features there on FieldNET, start and stop a pivot, that kind of stuff, and then just like the map view settings. And then I'll get into a little bit of the hardware. I'm going to do the pivot control hardware just because that's our universal piece of hardware where you can do all of your basically any electric pivot. And then I'm going to touch on our precision VRI just because it is an option out there that I don't think maybe everybody really knows about, but it is kind of an expensive option, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. So just getting into FieldNET, essentially what is FieldNET? Integrated and easy-use solution for water, fertilizer, chemigation management. So it has the remote monitoring and full control. You get remote control of your equipment. It's web-based, so you can use it on your computer, and it also has apps that you can put on your Apple or Android devices. And then it gives you applications for decision making, and then there's plug-and-play hardware like flow meters, rain buckets, temperature sensors, pressure transducers that you can add, as well as weather stations and soil and moisture stations to help make decisions. So here's kind of what the map view is. Essentially, it tells you all the status icons, so you can look at the map and know what's going on in your field, where your equipment started, its current position, where it's going, and then the colors tell you what it's currently doing. And then the dashboard basically gives you your information of what's going on out in the field. And then the app, you guys can download this at the App Store or Google Play. It's just a free app. FieldNET Mobile is what it's called. And essentially, you can look at the map view or the list view from the app, and you got all your control functions except for generating your plans. That's done on the full website. So before I get into it, if you guys wanted to mess around with this, here's the login information. So you go to myfieldnet.com, click on the customer login, and then you can use the username demo user and the password show demo to get into our demo site where we have a lot of equipment loaded, and you can play with that. And then it's the same credentials for the App Store. You just find FieldNET Mobile on the store for whichever device you have. So with that, I'm going to get in here to now. Can you guys still see this screen or not?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay.
No, that's a good point.
So when you first log into FieldNET, one thing I like to point out here is that we have these customer tutorials in the FieldNET manual down here underneath our Twitter feed. So if you wanted to come in here and look at these, you can click on them, and Amy's got a bunch of videos on here on how to do a lot of this configuration, adding contacts, that kind of stuff. So if you wanted to use those credentials and log in, then you would be able to have access to these and just kind of check them out, watch them as you go, or if your customer had a specific question, you know, this is always a good place to look. Along with our customer service team, you can always call them if you need to. So we have a team in Omaha. It's 866-MY-FIELDS. So you can give them a call and they'll help answer your questions if you're having a hard time figuring something out. So from here then, I like to go into this map view. This is where a lot of our customers spend their time. Essentially, I've got a couple set up on here, but it just kind of tells you what's going on. So as you spend more time with it, you know that blue means that it's walking and applying water. Red means that there's an alert of some kind, and then green means it's walking but not applying water. And then the flags show you which direction it's going. So if you wanted to, then you can go into a piece of equipment, you just click on it, it pulls up what we call the quick tray, and it tells you, is it running a plan or is it in manual mode, what direction, its position, its circle time, and then it'll show you the rate with the depth applied, and then if you have your water key on or not, and then if you have a service stop set. So you get a lot of information, and you can do control functions from here. If I wanted to stop it and turn the water off, I can just click those keys, hit apply, and then if I wanted to go over to this one and turn the water on, I could do that too. So that's one of the features that our customers really like, is that they can send commands to multiple pieces of equipment without waiting for one of them to update. So they can just click go, click go, click go. Now, to get in a little bit farther into the system, you would click on this name again, and there it switched to stop because I set it that stop command. And here you can say manual mode, or you could put it into a plan, and then you can change the rate or the depth, and then you can also turn your auto reverse and your auto start off and on here in the dashboard. So then you'll notice over here on the left, you have a lot more options. So you can set up your end-gun tables. You can just click here, put in the ones you want. And then for the sectional plans, if you guys are loading these up, is what you would do is you'd come in and you'd name it, you'd create a new plan and you'd give it a name. Say OK. And then once you've developed your script, you just export that into a CSV file. So you've got your plan made, you come in, select it, and then you say import CSV. And you guys had sent me a couple here earlier. So I'm going to cancel that because this is a forward and reverse plan. So I'm going to say in the forward direction, now I want to import, and I'll do the forward wiper and hit open, and it'll bring those in and show you the different zones, start and stop, and the speed, and then the associated depth applied for those. So then to do the reverse section, I go from my forward, I select reverse, and it'll automatically populate the reverse the same as the forward until you tell it otherwise. So it went in there as forward and reverse, so now I tell it reverse, upload the other plan, there's the wiper reverse, hit open, and then you can see it change those rates. So from 0 to 1 and 1 to 5 we got 22 and 22.5, and if you go to the forward they're still at 30 and 30.5. So you can see it updated those, and then as you're running your plan, so to get it to run the plan, I'm going to hit save. You go to your dashboard, and where it's in manual mode, select your CropMetrics plan, and then it'll tell you it's operating under a plan, forward, and apply, and then it'll automatically start running that forward one. And if you were to have send it in reverse, then it knows that it was in reverse, and it would automatically begin running the reverse plan. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions on that, on how that operates, or anything that you'd like me to show you specifically?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and we can type them in that chat box, and then we can unmute you if needed be, if you need to explain yourself on a question. Okay, no questions coming in yet, Nick.
Okay, well then I'll keep on going. So the other nice thing about this is now you have your sectional water usage reports. So this won't have any details in it because I just made the plan, but essentially it'll give you reporting based on the zones. So you can see at the end of the season, or you can pick your dates to say, you know, in this time frame, how much water did I apply, and you can compare your yield maps and do all that stuff with it as the seasons go by. So you have all those capabilities as well. So the other nice thing about FieldNET that, you know, isn't really specific to these sectional plans that customers really like is obviously the alerts. So they get text messages if there's a shutdown, or essentially they can choose pretty much anything that goes on they can get an alert for if they want. So they can really be up to date on what's happening out in the field, and they can set up multiple contacts and send alerts to different people based on different events and that sort of stuff. So that's a big feature for the customer, because once they are needing the water, it's important that they know that their machine's actually doing what they're wanting it to. Another point that I'd like to make here about these plans is that you can have unlimited plans. So, and you can have up to 360 different zones. So say you had this plan that we were running for the CropMetrics plan here, and you wanted to do a duplicate, or essentially it's a save as. So you can just click on that, give it another name, and then now it's saved it. So all your zones are saved, and if you wanted to do a speed adjustment, say you get some rain or whatever, you can do you know, a 10% speed increase, and it'll go ahead and it'll adjust that all the way across all your different zones. So you don't have to go in and set each one up again individually if you wanted to make just a you know, a little change like that. And then again you hit save, and now you've developed that. And so notice that I was in the forward, so the reverse ones went the same. I'm not sure there. So the reverse one stayed the same. So in order to get onto FieldNET, for old systems, you can use the pivot control, and essentially it'll retrofit onto any existing electric pivot, so they can use the contactors, the power source, the disconnect, and the fuses from the old panel, and it gives you full remote control and monitoring. And it's a pretty easy upgrade solution, considering that it just takes over that old panel, so you don't have to try to mount something on the end of the machine and kind of arm wrestle with that old panel, you don't have to worry about keeping that old panel up to at 100% speed all the time. In case you want to change it from your phone, it automatically will sync from the panel to the computer to your mobile app. And essentially is what that does is it prevents overwatering mistakes, because if you're running at say 50% and you've got it up to 100 on your panel and 50% on your phone, and then somebody comes out to the field and says, man, this thing needs to be running at 50%, and they turn it down, then you're running a percentage of a percentage, and you're overwatering, which is costing you time to get around your field. It's also costing you, if you start flushing out some of your other expensive inputs out of your root zone and they can't be there and available for uptake, then it starts costing a little bit of money, creating some headaches. The other nice thing about it then is that there still is in-field control with it. So if you do happen to be out in the field, you have a selector switch. Essentially you point it at the way that you want it to go, forward, reverse. You can turn your water key off and on, stop, percent, and then you press the button. There's a little button there that sends the command. And so the LED shows the rate, and it will also give you codes. If you put it over here to this little eye, like information, it'll throw codes, and then there's some guides in that manual that kind of show you what to look for if there is an alert condition. And then you'll notice that when the water's on, the display is blue, same as on FieldNET and on the mobile app, that if you are walking and you're watering, then it's a blue icon. So it has the same look and feel across the app, across the website, and out in the field. So this is kind of what it looks like installed. You put the pivot control at the center point. You still do have a GPS that goes out on the end. So this you wire into your last tower box, and you can wire up your end guns into it, your ground and your neutral and your safety, and then a pressure transducer if you wanted to. So as I mentioned, you have the capability to bring in a flow meter, a temperature gauge, a rain bucket, and pressure transducers all at the center point. But then you also have the option to do a pressure transducer out on the end. So you could, if you wanted to, choose to have two pressure transducers on the same system. And some guys like that so that they can monitor their pressure differential across their system, and also some guys just like having it out at the end so that they know they've got pressure all the way out in their machine. So here again is just kind of an overview of what I just went through. You can have 360 zones, forward and reverse plans, and you can do your reporting. So the other nice thing that I guess I forgot to mention that our customers really like is, since we moved to the center point and we're able to do these controls, and we have the water key here on the panel, we can actually toggle the water off and on remotely as well as your accessory. So because we're able to wire directly into it, if there was an instance where you wanted to turn your water off or on in a certain zone, you have that capability. And then also, because we can control the accessory pump, then you can apply your chemicals in certain areas if you wanted to do that as well. So say you wanted to treat just a section of your field, you have the capabilities to do that. Okay, so here's kind of what I wasn't able to show that report because I didn't have any information in it, but this is essentially what it would look like. Based on your different degrees here, it would show you your water usage. So you can select your date range if you wanted to go the full season, or maybe you decided that you only wanted to go for a week or a couple of days, or whatever it might be. So if you have your flow meter attached, then it'll know this. Otherwise, essentially we just put in the sprinkler chart information and it can do it calculated based on the hours that were run. So that's kind of that's kind of the whole FieldNet pivot control deal. So basically on our Vision and our Boss panels that are out there, if you guys are running across those, they may, like the newer ones, will have these capabilities to load these sectional VRIs in them. Some of the legacy ones, or the ones that are more than 2 years old, I would say, we have the capabilities to add it, but we would have to go out to the machine and flash the firmware. So we didn't always have this capability, but we can go back to our old computer panels and get that added. So any questions so far on the FieldNet side?
Got a couple of questions. The first question was the main dashboard for each unit is a little small. Are there any plans to make the maps and the pivot controls bigger to fit some of the new screens, some of the HD screens we've got today?
Well, what do you mean? I guess they're small on what?
Let me find him and I'll get him unmuted here. Cal, you're unmuted on our end. Do you want to tell us? Oh, on a laptop, he said.
Well, I would say that, I guess I got mine up here, and I don't feel like that's looking very small. I mean, mine's on a 30-inch monitor, and I mean, it basically is formatted so that it takes up the whole screen. So I guess I can look into that and see, if other people are having the same issue. However, it's the first I've ever heard of it coming up.
Okay. Other question we've got, is there a way to export the irrigation report in a digital format so you can overlay it with like yield maps or do any analyzation with it, or is it just come in a CSV tab or just a report?
Yeah, so if you're in your reports, you can go to the water usage and then you can export it. So once you get that loaded, your date range, and like I said, I just loaded that plan in here and we've not run anything yet on it. But once it does start to populate, you can just click export and it'll export that into a CSV for you.
Okay. Any other questions right now, guys? Okay, I think we're good for right now. We can keep trucking.
Okay. So the other thing then that I wanted to touch on a little bit is the precision VRI stuff. And Kylan wanted me to touch on this a little bit, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. But just so that you know it's out there, essentially we have the capability to control each individual drop of a sprinkler. So if you kind of look at this one, you see that there's the main controller piece that you add, and then we have wireless nodes that communicate down the line, and each node will control 4 different drops. So then there's latching solenoids. Essentially the node sends a signal, opens it, and then closes it. So it gives us the capability in areas to shut water off completely. Say you have an avoidance zone, then you can draw that in a shape file and it'll turn the water off completely, or you can have multiple rates across the same area. So if somebody's got a field that's irregular, or they have a big avoidance zone, or several avoidance zones like within the same sort of section, then there may be potential for this to pencil out. It's not something that you probably would fit on every field because it is can be kind of expensive when you're adding all those valves and the new controller and the latching solenoids and your different nodes. So this is essentially what you look like. You get your field information, you get your crop information, and then you add any avoidance areas that you may have, and you kind of develop your shape. So you can see here's an example. It's a 1,300-foot machine. It's 800 gallons per minute, and so he's got all these low spots in his field. And so essentially he set these up as avoidance zones, and he was able to no longer water those, dry them up enough to where he could plant through them and get them so they weren't so bottomed out, and he increased his yield quite a bit. So if you start adding up these acres, there's probably 10 acres there, maybe even a few more. In that instance, it really starts to pay off. And here's another one that we really like to show. It's a long machine, and you can see he's got these big lowland areas that he just really couldn't get anything out of. So he drew his zones, and you're talking about probably close to 30 acres here that he was able to completely dry out over a couple of years. Or not completely, I guess there's still little spots, but he actually started getting yield out of there from where he hadn't had any in the past. And the other nice thing about that is if you can get creative enough, he was able to work with the NRD and show them that, hey, I'm not watering this at all. And you look at the sprinkler here, and you can prove it just by looking at it that, hey, I'm not putting any water down on those acres. And they let him transfer his rights up to another machine up here in the corner. So essentially he got an extra 80 acres out of that. So there are instances where it could be a really big value add for the right field. And then you can still, communicate with that through FieldNET. You draw your shapes out in the software, and you can send it in back and forth. So just wanted to touch on that briefly so that you know that it's an option out there, and that we've had some fairly large success stories with it. Here's a couple examples, but if you run across something like this, sometimes it does pay pretty well.
Perfect. Got a couple more questions that came in, having to do with auto reverse. Can we do auto reverse on wiper VRI scripts now?
It depends on the hardware. So you can auto reverse. So if you were in here and you come to the dashboard, you can turn auto reverse on. And then it'll automatically do that. Now there is in some of our older equipment, the Vision and the Boss panels, there is not the option. They just didn't have the room to do a forward and a reverse plan in their hardware for all that memory. So those would probably require an upgrade to the pivot control system.
Okay.
In order to be able to do a separate forward and a separate reverse on those legacy ones. Now, I would say the workaround for that is if you came in here to your sectional plans and you set one plan up as a forward and reverse plan, call it, you name it reverse, and then you have another plan named forward, then they'll run different rates. The thing would be is instead of auto reversing, I would have it do a stop, and then it send you a message that, hey, it stopped, and then you come back in, you select a different plan, and then you send it in the other direction on that plan.
Okay, so that'd be the way
So
of
it's
getting two
not
different scripts going, one forward, one reverse. You'd have to manually
right.
do that. Okay.
Right. If you had the older hardware, then that's, you know, if your customer didn't want to spend extra money on upgrading to have that automatically, you know, it's something that he would have to do, or, you know, could do on his own. That would be, you know, a less expensive option, but maybe require a little bit more work on the app, on the app.
Another question came in. Can the system reverse in a plan?
Um, no. So you're talking about going to a certain degree and then stopping and then going in another direction for a period of time and then stopping and like coming back again.
Is that what you were looking at getting to, Harry? I can unmute you.
Yes.
So our only one that has that capability today is the boss panel. It has the boss is a little more involved than these than the sectional plans are. So our vision panel essentially was the driver for this pivot control, and so those two have very similar feature sets. The boss panel has some extra. The boss panel has some extra. What do you say? I guess plan features to where, you know, it can start on time. It can do reverse at degrees, but it doesn't look the same as this sectional plan. It's a little bit different to set up, but that panel is capable of doing it. But I'd say, depending on your location, you know, unless you're out in like the Northwest or some of those other areas where there's some higher value crops, you're going to run mostly across vision panels as far as the computer panels go.
Okay. Another question came in. Can we variable rate a fertilizer pump in a plan?
Well, I mean, you could toggle your pump off and on. So if you have a fertilizer pump out there, then yes, you can turn it on, and then you'd vary, you know, you'd vary the speed of your machine based on that. As far as sending like an analog signal to the pump to speed it up or slow it down itself, we just do basically a contact that opens and closes. So you'd want to you'd want to adjust the rate of your machine in order to, you know, to use fertilizer pump.
Okay. Another question. What's the average cost for one of the new units?
So the pivot control's list price is $1,600, $1,599. And then most of the time you need a pressure transducer, which is like another $200. And then if you have a vision panel already or a boss panel, those we just plug right into, and usually there is some sort of pressure transducer out in the field, so typically you're looking around $960 for those types of panels.
Perfect. Any other questions coming in? Well, Nick, doesn't look like we've got any other questions. Anything else you wanted to cover here this morning?
No, I think I think I kind of hit on the main things that you guys probably would run into in the field the most. So, you know, I guess the other thing is, if you got any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or, you know, Kylan and Nick and Scott all know how to get a hold of me. So if if you've got questions, I'm available, and you know, I'd sure like to help you there's any situations where we need to get something on there, feel free to get in touch with us.
Perfect. Well, I think with that, we will wrap up for today. So thanks everybody for being on. If you're in the middle of this ice storm, be safe here the next few days. So thanks again, Nick. We appreciate it. And if you guys have any questions, let us know and we can get you in contact with him. So thanks again, everybody.
All right. Thank you.